Indie Author Lab from the Alliance of Independent Authors is a brand new in-person event for indie authors during London Book Fair Week. Taking place in London on March 11, 2026, it's a full day of mentoring, workshops, and community connection. Created for indie authors by indie authors. Learn more and secure your tickets at selfpublishingadvice.org/indieauthorlab. Hello and welcome to Self-Publishing with ALLi, the podcast that brings you all the advice, news, and inspiration an indie author needs today. And today, you're listening to our creative self-publishing stream. It's brought to you by Orna Ross's Go Creative program, helping authors harness the power of creative flow in writing and publishing. And now, here's Orna Ross and Joanna Penn with today's episode.
Welcome to the Self-Publishing with ALLi podcast with me, Joanna Penn, and Orna Ross. Hi, Orna.
Hi, Joanna, and hello, everyone, and happy 2026. This is my first time to speak to everyone this year. I hope you're having a good year so far.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're here again, beginning of the year. I love January, love the new energy. And as ever, we're going to get into a number of things today. But first up, as ever, we are authors. We're doing stuff. So, Orna, give us a bit of an update on what you're doing and also what ALLi's up to.
Yeah, so my big sort of thing over the last little while has been a move to Substack, which came. I have been looking at it a little bit. I ruled Substack out a couple of years ago, and then last year it began to kind of surface a lot more, and I began to think about it. And then, as I always do, kind of rush of blood to the head, and just went ahead with it. And I'm loving it over there. And I know that some authors object to Substack on ideological reasons, but yeah, what I'm loving about it is that I'm bringing everything together in one place. And that's, to me, is what makes it unique and a really good place for authors. I also get a sense of fiction taking off there, and it has traditionally been very, very good for nonfiction, essayists and thought leaders in particular, but really all kinds of nonfiction, and a good place for authors to get attention for nonfiction books, but traditionally not so good for fiction or poetry. But I think that's changing now, and certainly it's something that they want to change and that they are encouraging there. So yeah, it's been very exciting for me. It's energized. I was struggling with a book at the end of last year. It has helped me to get on top of that, I think, and yeah, I'm enjoying that very much. And at ALLi, we're planning the year ahead. We've lots of really interesting and exciting things that are happening. Some of them which are the results of work last year. So our bookstore is now, authors are beginning to upload their books there, and we will be having the launch at the London Book Fair. So this is a public-facing store which is book-driven, not author-centered. So we've always had the author profile for ALLi members, where they could upload their books and be found, if you like, and we would bring media people and event organizers and stuff who would come to us and say, you know, do you have an author who can do such and such? Rather than giving them one person, we would guide them there and they could search and find what they wanted. This is something different, and it's an extra step in the ALLi dashboard if you want your books to be included in the bookstore. And this is very much about, it's going to be very reader focused. Melissa Addy is heading up the campaign, and lots of ideas about how to get it out into the wider world and get readers over to the platform. And it is not a bookstore in the sense that we won't be selling the books. We just give the author's preferred link and take the reader over to there. So yeah, that's happening. And also we are going to have our first full day event at the London Book Fair this year, the Indie Author Lab. And you can find out more about that at selfpublishingadvice.org/indie author lab. And yeah, it's going to be a day of some talks, but mostly a day where you bring along whatever is your current publishing challenge and be brought through a guided process to move you on. And there'll be lots of advisors there. You'll be there, Joanna, and lots of others. And we'll have expert tables where the attendees can sit and talk to people about their actual problem, and we will have a peer mentoring process that they'll be brought through as well, and a personal reflection process. So it's going to be, that's why we're calling it a lab, it's going to be very much you roll up your sleeves and do the work there and then, and leave with some work done and next steps. So yeah, there are two of the projects that are coming up.
Yeah, well, I've been, since we last spoke, I finished my first term in my master's, which is in death, religion and culture. It's very, works well with my fiction. And then the term ended and I was like, I really need to write some fiction. And I find both of us do this kind of swing from nonfiction to fiction. And I was deep in academic writing. And then I was like, I really just want to write a story where I make stuff up and it's really fun. So I'm currently just editing. I didn't have any time off over Christmas or New Year. So I've been working and I'm just editing Bones of the Deep, which will be my next thriller. It's a standalone and it's based on a tall ship crossing I did back in 1999 from Fiji to Vanuatu in the South Pacific. And it's so funny how some of these really long time ago ideas resurface. And I've wanted to write about this trip for ages. And then one of my papers at college was around museum ethics, around human remains and what we do with the dead that explorers went and got, in the Victorian times and stuff. And also some of my fascination with merfolk. So yeah, this will be an interesting, fun book. At jfpenn.com/bones if you're interested in any of that. And I'm back to uni next week. So I'm kind of back into the academic writing, very, very non-fiction-y focus. So yeah, I feel like it's very filling the creative well. That was part of the reason to do this master's, and it's definitely done that. And I wasn't expecting to write a book so soon.
Get a novel.
I couldn't help myself.
On your Christmas break. That's pretty good.
Well, it was a break from academic writing, and yeah, it's just been really fun to make stuff up and not have to do citations every paragraph.
Oh, it's such a relief, isn't it? It's
such a relief. But anyway, yes, so that is what I've been doing. But I also did a big goal sort of post for 2026, and I did a very big on my show, a sort of look into what I think will be the trends in 2026. And so that's kind of some of what we're going to be talking about today, because you've had a read of it and you had some things that you want us to get into. So how do you want us to start with that?
Yeah, so thank you for that post. It was super interesting, particularly around all the different AI trends. And yeah, we will include the link to that actual show in our show notes here for people to go across and get the detail. Before we move into talking about, because I would like to talk about some of the things that you touched on there, could you just do a tiny sort of sneak peek for the listeners as to what you're going to be talking about at the Indie Author Lab Day? I know that you're going to do a talk for us on, I'm calling it in my head, business basics, but tell us a little about it.
Yeah, so one of the, obviously you and I were in Vegas, we went to Author Nation, and one of the amazing things about Author Nation was how many sessions there were so many sessions. And what I've got the sense of recently, though, is that there's so much overcomplication with what the author business is. Now, before I was an author, I ran my own other businesses. I ran a scuba diving business, I did property investment, and I was a business consultant for years. And at heart, the author business is no different to any other business. And if you take your artist hat off and put your business hat on, at heart, we have customers, we have products, we have sales and distribution, we have marketing, and then we have finance and hopefully investment. And those things, the heart of any business. And I feel like what's happened with are wonderful. And it's wonderful. We have so many choices. This is a very good thing, because when I started, back in 2007, 2008, we didn't have any of the choices we have now. Like, we really had basically nothing. And now we have so many choices. But what that means is that people are getting confused. And I think half the time, people say, oh, I want to do all these things, and then they're making it harder for themselves than they need to, because there are levers you have to pull in business. And I think the problem that's going on in the community sometimes is people are trying to pull all these levers at the same time, and they're getting just some burned out is one phase, a long way down the line, but just confused, and also maybe spending time and money on things they don't need to. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is cut through the noise. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I think it's really needed. Overwhelm is a real problem for almost everybody, I think, just managing and knowing how to prioritize and what we need to do. And of course, you also did some years ago that really good Business for Authors book based on an MBA, isn't that right? Wasn't that the kind of premise behind the book?
Yeah. What's so funny is that was 2014, that book.
Wow, a few years ago, Joe, a few years ago.
I know, but what's so interesting as well is that book hardly sells any copies, because most authors want to make money, but they don't necessarily want to run a business. And I think you and I both understand that business is creative. It's incredibly creative. The reason we have all the things that are around us is because people start businesses and make things. Like, business makes things. That's what it does. And it employs people, and it pays our taxes, which, helps people. And so I think people reframing business as creative and then trying to sort of drill down on the things that really matter will hopefully help more authors be more strategic in their businesses instead of getting confused. But at heart, you do have to kind of separate is this a hobby? Like, am I writing a book because I just want to write a book because I love writing, from a business which does aim to make a profit? So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to.
And that's so key, because that's the other thing that business does, is it makes money. It knows how to do that. These are very, I was going to say proven strategies, but it's more than that. These are the bones on which you build, the flesh kind of comes from. And if you don't have them, it's not likely that you're going to create something that's sustainable, that's going to last over time. So you can, as an author, strike lucky and have a viral kind of breakout. But even if you do and you have that luck, that doesn't mean that it's going to last. And the business basics that you are talking about, I think, are essential for creating something that does last and that is sustainable. And I think that point you made there is just so important, because I think authors get confused about what their priorities are. So, we all want to be rich, and we all want to be superbly artistically successful. But very often we have to trade off what works in one sense and for the other, and not necessarily, because there is a crossover and there's a sort of a magic place where something can happen. But I think authors are very confused, and if you don't know what you're leading with and which of these is more important to you, you can wind up following every piece of advice and getting very overwhelmed. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the talk, and thanks for sharing a little bit about it. So let's just move now to some of your predictions. So a quick summary maybe of all the amazing things that are happening on the AI front for those who may not be as familiar with them as you and your followers would be.
A quick summary of everything is probably a bit of a tall.
The things that are most, even in your roundup post, there was so much, so many different things under the umbrella of AI, but just one or two or three of the things that you think are the most significant. And then I'd like to kind of tease out some of the things that I feel I'd like to talk about or ask you about.
Mm. Well, I think for me, it is just we're in at this point where it's moving into everything. So, I mean, I obviously break out things like AI translation, I think is a growing thing that's picking up already. And there's a lot of energy in AI translation. And in my overview post, I also go into all the traditional publishing things. So last year, AI voice for audiobook narration, I think really took off. And we've seen traditional publishers move into that too. And my point in my overview was, look, if traditional publishers are doing this, we're not early on this. So, and traditional publishers are also now moving into some AI translation. So it's sort of a case of, well, this is moving into the business of publishing. And there are licensing deals going on for sure. In the US, there are still open things and there's going to be a payout around copyright. But there was also a ruling that if the copies are acquired legally, then they can be used in the training data. But other countries have moved well beyond that and are just kind of getting on with stuff. And, although America is obviously a big market, that's not the only market. So there's a lot of differences between UK copyright, for example, and also now the copyright law in India, for example. So we're not stopping this train. This train is not stopping. So it's more about, well, how do we look at this as a tool? And it's a bit like, when I started in self-publishing in 2007, there was no Kindle, there was no iPhone. And the change in the way we do business and the way we live our lives based on the iPhone and the mobile economy and internet business in general, the difference between the 90s of how you did business versus now, this is the change we're looking at. So yes, we can break it down into, okay, well, AI images or AI video or AI translation, but you have to kind of reframe it as, look what the internet did for things. If this is a similar kind of shift, then it actually affects everything. And I hope that we're moving into a year when people can see it more as a tool rather than to fight against. So I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so many different things about AI personally, and then obviously ALLi has its own AI policy, which people can see at allianceofindependenauthors.org/AI. I agree with you about this sort of getting in everywhere into everything and very, very quickly. And I think traditional publishing moving in there so quickly is very interesting when you think of how long there was a resistance to ebooks, for example. It took years in some quarters for ebooks to be acceptable, and there was this whole idea that they'd never take off, and then it was going to be the death of print, and there was a lot of doom and gloom around all that. But it took a long time for the wave to kind of move through, whereas this AI change, I think, has been embraced hugely and very quickly by publishers, because this time they see the financial, the financial writing on the wall, where I think they didn't quite with ebooks, and maybe there was a determination not to make that mistake again, because indie authors definitely ran away with that particular model and broke in through ebooks in a way that had never been seen before. And I think authors this time are the ones that are feeling a lot of resistance towards what's happening. And I think it's very understandable when you look at how the AI companies have behaved and have very deliberately, just ignored copyright and powered on and deliberately gone and, used pirated books and so on. That obviously wasn't necessary, B, was greedy, and C, is going to put up the backs of the creative community, and naturally. So, ALLi will continue to do what it can, and in the face of what, as you say, is a runaway train. But yeah, it's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in what we're using. If we have a smartphone, It's in what we're using if we do a search, and the idea that we can kind of hold out against this and still run a successful author business. Is that possible? That's something we'll talk about in a minute. There's obviously an analog movement that's kind of jumping up against as digital becomes stronger, and this always happens. But
I think probably, just as you were talking there, I think maybe the issue, well, the reason traditional publishers are jumping in is because they are businesses.
yes,
Traditional publishers, yes, of course, there are creative people within those companies, but usually they license the creative work from creatives, from authors. So, and this is where you kind of have to put different hats on, right? Because if you are in business, it's like saying, well, I'm not going to use the internet. Well, of course, you can run a business without using the internet, but it's going to be a very different kind of business than if you use all the tools that the internet gives us. And this is kind of the same. So I think how you seem to be able to split things around AI is interesting, because you have a lot more issues with it than I do on your creative side. And yet on business, I think we agree on a lot of things around the business side. And I feel like traditional publishing perhaps have very few. I think maybe in public they might say things, and then what we've seen kind of evidence, as I shared in my post, was they're embracing it for a lot of business things. So I think maybe if people can separate stuff in their head, then they might be able to use it for the tasks around business, and then maybe just have different choices creatively. I don't know. That's how you're kind of thinking?
We see a lot of that. And I mean, from our perspective, the main thing is that we're representing as wide a group of authors as we possibly can. So we don't want anybody to feel that they're judging each other, fighting each other, throwing hate speech at each other around this issue. It's about everybody finding their place where they want to be. But I think the separating of the creative and the commercial here is extremely useful, because we are unique in that way. Well, not unique, but it's the way in which we have had to bring those two sides of ourselves together all the way through here has been different to most writers who kind of just do the writing, and I'm talking about in the past, do the writing and then hand over all the business stuff to somebody else. Indie authors kind of blew that, and we were told that authors never want to do any business and never want to be in charge of that side of things. But indie authors blew that out of the water, and we saw that there is a sizable cohort of authors who do want to have the commercial control as well as the creative control. And the ebooks, it's interesting because that was just a piece of technology that allowed authors to get creative, and it had commercial rewards, but it wasn't done with the business hat on. So I think that is the theme of this podcast, isn't it? This episode is very much about separating out those two things when it comes to thinking about AI or indeed any of the other things that are going on at the moment.
Yeah, so, well, then I hope that the very first thing that we're going to talk about, so one of my predictions, I had 8 predictions. One of them was AI will create, run and optimize ads without the need for human intervention. Now, as there are things we all love, right? I don't know many people, there are some, but not many authors love doing things like Amazon ads, and many people just outsource it because they don't want to do it themselves. And that obviously costs money. So I have for several years now had this sort of ideal in my head. What I really want is to be able to say to my AI, my friendly AI, please go market this book. And one of the things that many of us do use is Amazon ads. And what happened recently, like in the last week, is there has been the release of Claude Cowork. Now, there's been a lot of talk around AI agents, has become a bit of a kind of buzzy phrase, agents. And a lot of these so-called agents are not real agents. So what I mean is saying, okay, market this book, and then it goes away and does that for me. And in this last week, I have seen the first glimmers of this in Claude co-work. So at the moment, and we're recording this on the 15th of January, 2026, and essentially this will just get better and better and be available to more and more people. But I can open the Claude co-work thing, and this is Claude.ai, and you have to be on a paid level, but it's certainly cheaper than hiring a human at the moment. But essentially, I can say to it, help me do my Amazon ads, and I don't have to do it myself. So I had the screen open and I had my Amazon ads open, and it ran analysis on my ACOS and all my clicks. And then it said, okay, turn these things off, and it could do it itself. It adjusted the amount on some of the bids. It changed some of the keywords. It put some of the keywords in the different search term fields and all this. And as somebody who has resisted doing this myself for so long, I actually learnt an incredible amount watching it work with my own data. But what kind of just gave me a wow, mouth open moment is watching it run my Amazon ads. And that just made me so hopeful for what we'll be able to do with a true AI marketing agent, a machine, a tool that can help us with something that we don't particularly enjoy. And I think that's just my entire attitude around AI is I'm a one-person business deliberately. I don't want to scale the number of people I work with. I don't want to have a warehouse. I don't want to do all of this myself. I want to write books. I love writing books. I love researching books. I love traveling to research. I love the community. I love podcasting. I don't want to do a lot of the business tasks, but I don't want to hire. I don't want to spend tons of money hiring to do that for me. So this just made me so hopeful. I know you haven't been able to look at this yet, but what are your thoughts?
Yes, I'm really interested in sort of the agent thing, this idea that of having a tool that runs tasks for you and all these tasks that we don't want to do. Well, what I'm even more interested in is sort of thinking about beyond that, if and when, these tools are available to us all to do the things that we don't want to do, then what are we bringing? What is it that the agents can't do? And that's one question that kind of really interests me. But also, what is the author's irreplaceable job, I suppose, is what I'm asking. If all of those are the indie authors, what are we bringing, and what's the important bit that we contribute? If the agent is able, if and when, because it's not if, it's a matter of when. All of this is going to be available to us, and it's going to be at a very reasonable cost. So for what it's doing, incomparably lower than it has been. And of course, authors being thoughtful people have all sorts of thoughts and ideas about what that means societally as well. So we can look at it through the business lens of what we want it to do, which is really interesting. And then wearing that other creative hat or author hat or social commentary hat or whatever, we may be looking at it in quite a different way. Do you have thoughts about that? What's beyond? What is an author when the tools can do so much so well?
Yeah, and I think you just have to say right now, these tools are excellent, and I'm calling it the tsunami of excellence. It's been called the tsunami of crap and AI slop and all this stuff, but actually, the IQ is higher than us. It's doing mathematical proofs now that humans haven't been able to do. This is not a case of, oh, one day this will be able to write books. This can write books now if you want it to. And there are, of course, people doing this already. And, but this is not the point to me. The point is, I'm not a writer because I'm the only person who can write a novel. There are plenty of humans in the world who can write better books than I can. I think, I'm humble enough to say that. I'm sure we all are. Like, there are lots of people who are better than us. But I don't therefore sit at home and go, oh, woe is me, everyone's better than me. Or for example, I go to a gym and I lift weights. I don't need to lift heavy objects. I can get like a mechanical thing to lift a heavy object, but I go and lift weights at the gym because it improves my health and it improves my physical and mental health. So let's face it, none of us are going to stop writing books when the AIs are genius level writers and publishers and business people and all that. That's not, we could do that right now because there's enough books in the world, blah, 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 but we're just going to carry on. So I don't have any concern about the creative side, about what we do. The author's irreplaceable job, as you put it, is still going to be writing the books only you can in the way that you want to, and reaching people who are interested in what you have to say. And so I just feel like this is, again, it's similar to the beginning of the internet. We just couldn't imagine how things would be reinvented by a technology that became the underpinning of so much. We just didn't know that. Like my entire life, my job, not my life, my job as an author, the creative pen as a business could not exist without the internet, without Amazon doing its thing, without the marketing angles we have, without the technology we have to do print on demand or, ebooks, or like what we're doing right now, Zoom. None of this existed, right? So this is what I want people to think in a hopeful way, which is, yes, we are in a time of transformation. And how indies surfed that wave of change back in 2007, and we did, and we have continued to. This is the same now. Now, of course, there's always disruption, but in that my business didn't exist before the internet, there are going to be new businesses that will come into being because of AI. So I think the better attitude is, what do I love? What do I love about being an author? And for me and for you, and I think probably 99% of authors, it is the writing and the creation of a book and holding a book in your hand and saying, I made this. That's why we're addicted to this. That's why we write another book as soon as we finish the last one. That literally, I think, is it. So I don't think that's going anywhere.
No. And I think, I made this is the key. So in terms of convincing the reader then, because for the reader, if the tools can write brilliantly and do our business brilliantly and design our covers brilliantly and all the rest of it, then we're looking at, I think, and this is, to me, is where it comes into what's not replaceable. Things like meaning and trust and the craft, the effort and the human sweat and that has gone into the making, and the community, the connection with the reader and the community, and then the authority that comes from living a human life. These are the things I think that we need to be leaning into as authors in this time, and that requires us to go quite deep in terms of our own motivations and reasons for writing, beyond that I enjoy this, or I'm driven to do this, or this is an illness I can't get over. What is it all about? At some level it has to be about serving a need in the reader for, yes, beautiful prose or fantastic exciting plots or deeply romantic story or whatever it might be, but beyond that there's something else going on, which is kind of two human minds connecting, and then how do we bring that out? And I think that will become just more and more important as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think, again, I mean, it's not new, but the selling direct model through Shopify, Kickstarter, in-person events, people forget in-person events is selling direct. And that doesn't have to be just marketing. It can also be sales. You can sell at fairs. You can, I started out as an author back in 2007 by putting up a workshop leaflet at a library like that. With my first book, I was doing library talks, and that just grew from there. So I think when we talk about being more human, doubling down on being human, it is doing things that the sort of let's call it mass market AI production, as I've said, can be excellent. We're not at all, I'm not saying anyway that is crap. I'm saying it can be excellent. But what the sort of high production model doesn't allow for is the sort of beautiful hardbacks that many of us are now extremely excited about. I certainly am. Like, one of the reasons of writing Bones of the Deep is so I can do awesome books, so I can have gorgeous end papers, and I love doing all of that kind of design with Midjourney. Like, Midjourney helps me create the things that I want to, and I'm smiling because I've been playing with it, sort of creating stuff that I want to go in the print book and the sprayed edges and all of this kind of stuff. So, and being enthusiastic about the beauty of things, I feel still is pretty human, and selling things in person, going to physical events. Like, one of the reasons I want to come to the ALLi event at London Book Fair is because it's so human. We just can't replace this stuff, and we need it. And it helps other people, and we like helping other people. So I feel like that you can absolutely use all the tools you want to and still be more human as your sort of overarching business strategy. And then the trust angle, I think this is going to become a much bigger thing. I think even things like, for me, my Instagram is evidence of being human. I don't use social media for kind of selling things. I probably should do more of that, but I use it if you're like, is Joe a real person? Well, go on my Instagram and scroll through, and sure, it can all be faked, but can it be faked for years and years and years? And like my Amazon account, I've had it for 25 years now. So that's a signal that means that account can be trusted. You and I have known each other physically as well as online for a long time now, and so we have a level of trust. And in the community, it's very interesting. I found that there's so many scams right now, right? I mean, people have used my name in emails. Well, not people, these are AI email scams, right? There's a lot of them, but people will email me and say, I knew this wasn't you, because I know your voice and you would never ask this of me. And so that's super important.
Absolutely. And so, the idea that the shop is central, I think, is shifting, and it's much more about focusing on, we've always talked about email and how important that is, but I think it becomes that permission that you're getting from the reader to be in contact with them and to repeat, and to build up a relationship over time, whether it's on social, whether it's real, is just becomes more and more key at this time. Another thing that we've both been talking about and are interested in is this idea of the transformation economy, where we're, moving beyond the book into thinking more about who we serve and how we serve them, and focusing on the change that our work brings about in the reader rather than the content. It's a little bit like the old business thing, don't focus on the features, but focus on the benefits. And as authors, I don't think we've necessarily always thought enough about that. And I think we are now being forced to think more about that at this time. What are your thoughts on the transformation economy?
Yeah, so I was writing about this in my sort of 2026 goals, because I started out in nonfiction self-help, and for the last few years, really since November 2022, when ChatGPT launched, it's clear more and more that if you have a question around self-help, you can get a very specific personalized answer from an AI like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever, and you can give it context, so it's really specific. So you can buy a book from a self-help author, but it won't be specific to your situation. And so I hope this helps people, but I have felt a bit like, oh, well, do I have a place anymore as someone who writes the kind of self-help how-to nonfiction? And then this idea of the transformation economy, and even my website, The Creative Pen, has been focused more on the how-to. And then the idea of the transformation economy is, well, actually, it's not how to just the functional steps, it's how to transform. So my book How to Write a Novel, for example, the how-to steps are not as important as the transformation that you get from going from someone who's never written a novel to someone who has finished a novel and published a novel. And that transformation is something I have been through. So my authority there is because I have been through the transformation, and so I can help you. It's not just the how-to, it's the what happens to you in going through the journey. And then I've also got sort of the transformation into a confident author, someone who is, and I think this is super important in an age of AI, someone who's confident in their author voice, their taste, their I feel like if you're a new author, I've had questions from people, which is, I'm worried that the AI will I don't know, affect my decisions somehow, that it will come through in what I'm doing and it will make the choices for me. And I'm like, well, this is where you have to be confident in your voice and in what you are drawn to. And, you know, it's very, very different. You and I could have the same writing prompt and it would be very, very different because we're such very different. So different. But so this idea of transformation, even the AI stuff, I feel like one of my roles in the community these days is helping people move from fear to confidence in using AI tools. And so that is actually one of my transformations now with my Patreon. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it, is that we need to switch our heads and what we write to being more about the transformation of ourselves, but also the transformation of our readers and the people we serve.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we're doing that one-day event as a lab, and, you know, not just as an information download, because the information is available now to us in so many different ways. It feels that when we get together in person, doing something that's, you know, more transformational is certainly worth pitching for. So we'll see how
that's it. Actually, as you were saying there's a movement in the US called the Alpha Schools, which is doing this because the way AI powered education can actually help people. Everyone could just be sitting at home getting their AI tutor and powering them forward. But that's not the point of an in-person school, right? In the same way as going to an author event, you don't need us to force feed you more information. What you need is the community, the transformation, the things that you can't get from these things. So I think this is going to become only more and more important. So as a creator, listening, just start thinking about, okay, so how have I transformed, and how could my reader and my community transform based on what you write? And that can be fiction or nonfiction, right? Poetry, everything.
Great. Okay, we're coming up to the end of our time, but I do want to ask you this because it's important. Discovery is shifting, you know, from just search into AI answers, and being referenced now is more important than you know, the click through stuff. So how do authors actually sort of set up to be discovered by the AI who's telling people, you know, what is what?
Yeah, well, I think personally, I am extremely excited by AI book discoverability, because maybe other people have this, but especially with fiction, if I'm looking for something on a site like Amazon, so much of it is paid ads that I can't find things I want. So I've been using ChatGPT and Claude for a while now to find books, and it finds me fantastic books because it knows what I like. I can give it lists of all the things I like, and it will find me books, really quite specific books. For example, I read one recently that was based on, it's called Slashed Beauties, and it's based on my love of anatomy, anatomical models, anatomical Venuses they're called. And it found me this novel, and I was like, that is great. I never would have found that otherwise. And so what's happening, in fact, ChatGPT and Google Gemini have just signed deals with Shopify to start with actual direct clicks within the AI models so that people can buy directly. One of my predictions for this year is that Amazon is going to sign some kind of deal. Walmart has already signed. So these things are happening. Like book discoverability is going to change. As you say, just pure search is changing as well. The good news is that because a lot of people are buying after a conversation, the actual conversion of that click is much, much higher. Now, there are fewer clicks because, again, you're way, way down in the long tail. But the people who might find your book based on such a detailed conversation are potentially more likely to buy. So I'm super excited about that. I think we've seen that over Christmas. ChatGPT's shopping research was launched just before Christmas, and the signals are that lots of people use it to find things to buy. So I want people to think positively about that. Obviously, if you're blocking your entire website and you're blocking your books and you're blocking everything from AI engines, then you're not going to get found. So one of the first things I would say is to go into Google, Gemini, search your name, search your book names, search your author brands, see what comes up. And interestingly, it's often not Amazon. So it does find Shopify stores. It finds secondhand bookstores. For some people, it will surface Goodreads, which I find quite interesting. So have a look at what it surfaces already for you, just to see what's coming through, and you might be surprised. And then it's kind of, I think things keep moving, obviously. But personally, I'm just making sure that I'm adding more information onto my book pages on my website and on my Shopify store and onto Google. So I'm making sure things are in Gemini somehow, because of course Google still has the biggest search methods as such, and probably will still with the switch to AI search. But those are some of the things. I don't want to get too technical, but the first thing to do is definitely check whether your books are even being surfaced.
Okay, that's fantastic. We are out of time, and that's one I think we'll return to. But yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for all of that and for the two great posts. Do you want to give people the links to where they can read? We'll have them in the show notes.
In the show notes. Yeah, well, since you're listening, you can come over and listen to the Creative Penn podcast, Penn with a double N, and that is my 2026 predictions, just posted the beginning of January. So that has a lot more about information there. You can just read the transcript if you prefer. But yeah, I think overall, and I know you feel the same way, we don't want people to be scared about the future. It's more like, okay, what can we take advantage of as author businesses? What do we keep as the most important thing as human? And then also thinking about the possibilities of how can we use the tools to take away the tasks that we never enjoyed anyway? That's how I like to think about it. I'm excited about this year. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Fantastic. And if you'd like to work out some of these things with other ALLi members, please do come along to Indie Author Lab if you're anywhere near London on the 11th of March. And we will have a digital ticket also for those who can't make it to London. So you can get your ticket now at selfpublishingadvice.org/Indie Author Lab. All right. Thank you so much. And happy writing and happy publishing. Bye-bye.
Happy publishing. Bye.
You've been listening to Self-Publishing with ALLi, the podcast that brings you all the advice, news, and inspiration an indie author needs today. Our creative self-publishing stream is brought to you by Orna Ross's Go Creative program, helping authors harness the power of creative flow in writing and publishing. And if you haven't already, we invite you to join our association and become a self-publishing ally. You could do that at allianceindependentauthors.org.